All right, here we are. I am Marianne, and this is,
Jimmy, hey guys.
and we are here doing some, thinking of what we're going to be putting together as far as the Murder Valley thing. So, as we were doing this, we were thinking maybe there's some questions that some people are wondering about my background, and there's some questions that Kimmy came up with that, she's been wondering, even though she's lived with me most of her life. There's some things that she doesn't know the answers to. So I just thought, well, why don't we kill two birds with one stone and give you a little bit about my background? And I guess this seems kind of like what they used to do in court too. When you go to court, you don't just say, "Oh, I'm a forensic DNA analyst and I know everything." And they're like, "Okay, whatever. Tell us." You actually have to prove yourself
Oh, you,
that
d-
you
you
did.
didn't you didn't just walk in and say, "Hey, I can do this."
No, no, no. You just don't have a title and say, "Hey, I know everything." They the prosecution will say, well, tell us about your qualifications, and you tell them that you have your degree and that you've been trained and that you've done these many cases before. And oh, which kind of stinks when it's your first case. You're like, well,
Mm.
yeah, I've been but you're trained for so long, and you're watched for a good amount of time, and they look at your data, they look at your technique, that when you do your first solo case, it isn't your first solo case.
Oh.
It's just the first case you just happen to be testifying
Mm.
in. And interestingly enough, even though I was stationed in El Paso, my first case was actually in Corpus Christi because I had been training in Austin and Corpus had the case. We're looking at little Luna.
I'm looking like the cat. She's
She's so
cute.
pretty.
She's sleeping over there.
Okay. So questions.
Oh, well, going since we were talking about that we were always around you like the entire time when we were little.
Hmm.
This kind of brought into an interesting question that I hadn't really realized until I was talking with my classmates when we were waiting for class to start and stuff like that,
Hmm.
but friends and stuff like that. Do you think it's weird that we know some of these things? Because you would always talk to us about like not about like everything, but like things to watch out for,
Hmm.
red flags to be aware of, and that led to certain things, or just like more famous cases that about like famous serial killers and stuff like that. And when it came out, I was talking to my classmates about it, it came out and completely surprised the majority of my classmates when I
You mean not everybody knows that Ted Bundy broke into the sorority house and killed the girls in a mad frenzy?
yeah, and that's what confuses some of my classmates thinking like I remember I brought it up like I brought it up like it was nothing because we were just having a conversation. I said, well, that's what happened, I was telling them about it, and I turned around and he was just looking at me like, and how did you know that? Like what? I was like, what? And I explained to him and said that I'd always hear those stories from you about like
Right.
things to be aware of and just little tidbits of
I
information.
think
But
everyone that works in some form of law enforcement tells their family what's out there. You don't go into case by case specifics, but you kind of like make mental notes of, you know, the victim did this, so be careful. That not victim blaming, but just kind of like make sure that you're aware of your surroundings, make sure that, and ultimately, the one thing that I think I should want to tell you, anybody, is don't be too trusting about everybody because not everyone deserves a trust. Trust is earned, respect is earned, and you're worth you're worth it. And even if that means that you're rude to people, it's okay to be rude if you feel that you're being placed in a position where your life is at risk. I'd rather say I'm sorry than not ever say hello to someone I love. You
Yeah.
know, that's the thing. It's like, so you gotta pick your battles, and if you're wrong about them, there's always a way to apologize. Um, if you're wrong about that. If you're wrong in the other direction, you don't get a second chance for anything. And again, so I think that's why I told you guys all these things.
So I
Yes,
see the
Leaky.
cat. He's looking at me.
Hey,
I'm sorry.
Leaky.
He started looking at me
He's
right now.
agreeing with me. See, told
Hmm.
you so. So did that answer?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's see. Another question that I had was, what made you start forensics? Oh, hey, Luke. He just jumped on.
Well, I'd always wanted to be some sort of scientist. I first started off wanting to be a medical doctor. Then I got sick and I became so whiny. And so I thought, oh my God, imagine seeing 40 whinies people in a room. I know that sounds rude, but you guys don't know how whiny I can get when I'm sick. And I just thought, even four of me, back to back would not be the greatest thing. And I thought, no. And so then I decided, well, maybe I'd go into research. And okay. But then when it came right down to it, I couldn't figure out something I really would like enough to study forever and ever. And just so happened about that same time, my mentor had met the people from the crime lab here in McAllen. And so I started thinking that as a career option. Being an applied scientist, it's nothing to sneeze at. And um, it kind of lingered. And finally, I did apply. And I did not get called the first batch, but I got called a few months later to be interviewed. I had to go all the way up to Austin to interview in Austin. And I remember I was in this big boardroom in the Austin Crime Lab and had headquarters in Austin. And it was the head of the crime lab, all of them, the director of the crime labs, that is, and then the people that were the directors or the DNA analysts of the satellite labs from Lubbock, Dallas, McAllen, uh, Waco, I think. I forgot. There was like at least six people there, what, you know, interviewing me. And just a couple of weeks later, I got called asking if I wanted to go to El Paso. And I said yes.
Nice.
So, yeah,
Cool.
it was until it wasn't. But it was cool for a while.
Oh, that led me to another question, actually.
Did I answer everything?
I think. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I asked what. Yeah. I forgot what question I asked. Let's see. The next question was, oh, is it like the way you see it in like TV and movies that it's like all these fancy numbers and
You mean the hotties?
yes, that too.
Yeah, no, no. We're all scientists.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm. But
Like, do you get like does it, like you get evidence like immediately? Does it
oh no, no,
you
no,
go
no,
like,
no,
yes, that's it. Like
no,
that's the one. This is the person.
no. Well, you can't say this is a person. You can't. Um, there is no moment where you point at somebody and say that's the one that did it. If you do, then people wonder about you. Because
like
the only thing you can provide are statistics and saying, oh, well, the chances of there being another person with that same DNA thing is 1 in 56 billion. And considering there have never been 56 billion people in the world at one time, that means that it was probably that guy, but you can't really say it's that guy.
yeah, you can't because your job isn't to like really it's not to point fingers. It's to provide like I said, it's to
No, you're
provide
just to
statistics.
provide
It's
statistics. You're a scientist.
yeah, you're not a
And when you're a scientist, you don't provide absolutes.
you can never really say something is
Never.
100%.
No.
Not just with like cases, but just with just everything in general,
Right.
because
Everything.
something there's like a slim chance it could happen.
Right. There's
No.
right. Okay. For a second, little Luna was misbehaving, so we had to take care of her for a little bit. She will be missed. No, I'm just kidding. We had to stop her.
Where did she go? Did she go into the little
She's
house?
in her
Oh,
little
there's there she
house.
is. She's in her house.
Okay. So what was the question?
Uh,
I think I finished.
you finished it? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, no, but everything isn't the way that it is in the crime scenes,
Well, you don't get
in
it
the
as quick.
crime shows. It's not as quick. There's backlogs that exist. At the time, there had been shortages of people wanting to go in there. And actually, not that people didn't want to go in there, but they were qualified people that wanted to go in there. And it makes it sound now that I'm being really arrogant and saying that I was so qualified and so perfect. But no, I was not. I got called, like I said, I got called in a couple of months after my interview, and I think I was number 6 on the list of 10. But that's okay, because you know what?
Hmm?
I was on that list.
Yeah.
There you go.
Nice.
Anything else?
I've got. Let's see. I am not going in order of the list I made. There was that one. Oh, okay. Yeah, I got three more that I didn't answer. Okay.
Okay.
Uh, let's see. What was the most violent thing you saw there? I don't know if you want to wait for that one for the end though.
They were all pretty violent. I mean, that's basically what DNA analysis is, right? It's dealing with violent crimes because once you start getting fluids out to be able to test
Yeah.
for DNA,
That yeah.
it
That's
technically means that it's a violent act has occurred, right? So I guess you could say they were all violent. The one that sticks out is the one I want to do the longer version on, and that I'm working on right now is the Sofia Martinez case. It was the majority of the cases that are violent crimes against people. The majority of them are people who know each other. Chances are, if somebody gets done in by someone, they were a spouse, neighbor, best friend, wife, father, mother, uncle, something along that line. But the few and far between cases are people who don't know each other. And the Sofia Martinez case was one that the girl had no idea who these people were. And they perpetrated violence against her, and she lost her life, and it was completely senseless. And I think that's the one that really gets to me because
it was so senseless and
random.
random.
It was random. It was whoever showed up at the ATM machine was going to be the person that they attacked. And it just so happened it was her. And I mean, who doesn't go to the ATM at night when they're going to go meet some friends? I mean, it's just something that you do. Maybe nowadays, not as much because you have so many people doing cash apps and things like that. But there are sometimes when people want to go and take some cash with them. Um, and that's pretty much what happened to her. And she was only, I think, 16, 17.
Oh wow.
She was very young, so much life ahead of her that was snuffed out randomly.
Damn.
Hmm.
Okay. All right. The next question is, uh, considering that, would you ever consider going back to something to that line of work?
Oof. I used to think I would. And being older now and more mature, then maybe yes. But at the same time, I think it's something that people should do when they're younger, simply because things don't seem to hit as well, as much as they do when you're older. Um, but honestly, I've always thought that every scientist should do a bit of forensics. As a matter of fact, I think anybody that goes into science, and I think that's what universities do nowadays, is if you are biology major or whatever, you have to take certain classes. Um, but I think as far as forensics goes, it would be interesting to have scientists do that simply because it's so immediate and it's so I don't know. It's real. I know that studying different diseases is real. Studying HIV is real. I did that once. Studying how to make sure that oysters are okay, I did that. And that was interesting. And it was real because you had people's businesses in hand. Um, but the forensics part, I think the violence part is what really is interesting. And that's what gets to me. Yeah. So I don't know if I answered your question.
Would you go back?
I don't
I mean, you have
know.
experience in a field that I don't know if a lot of other people do at
Mm,
the moment. I'm not sure, right? But
yeah.
um, you do have experience in that.
Hmm.
But I don't know if, given the things you did see, if that's something you'd be
Yeah.
willing to. Would you really be willing to go back?
Yeah.
Me and my brother aren't little anymore, and so I guess maybe you might not be seeing us as that, but now you might be seeing us as people on the street who,
Mm,
but
yeah. So I don't know. Maybe given the opportunity at the right moment, at the right time, that wouldn't be a bad thing. But I stopped for a reason. And maybe it got too real, maybe it got too surreal. But yeah. Sofia Martinez case, going back to that, that was one of the cases that made me go, I don't think I can do this much longer. Because again, it was so random. And it got to the point where I couldn't watch television anymore. The news, I could not watch them anymore because if you saw murder, and almost two or three people got murdered in El Paso at the time when I was there a day. And um, at the time, I just thought I couldn't. I knew exactly what had happened based on what people were saying had happened. I knew that I was going to get clothing. I knew I was going to hear horrible stories the next day or two, and I was going to hear details that the TV didn't have, and I was just going to guess, and I always guessed right. So I just thought, no, I can't watch television anymore because I know what my next few days are going to look like. And I still can't watch local news because I can tell you what happened and who did what to who.
I
And
thought I thought it just bored you.
no,
I never knew why you didn't want
no,
to see it.
I just can't.
Oh, okay.
Hmm. It's a little bit of PTSD, I think.
Oh, and my last question is, did you ever find anything weird or creepy and something that made something? I mean, I know the nature of these things you're going to be finding. It's going to be, weird. It's going to be
Hmm.
odd and unsettling. But did you ever find something that was creepy in a sense like, oh, why is this here? Something maybe more personally relating to you, or something more like not so much relating to you, but something more like as a message for the police
Mm.
or for law enforcement or
No,
something.
I never found that. But I did wonder if, like, sometimes if I missed any evidence that maybe there was somebody on my shoulder going, dude, can't you just see this is where they hit me? So I started thinking about things like that. The only creepy thing that ever happened in the lab was when I worked at a different laboratory and the machines just started running on their own. And that was creepy. I was at the
Oh,
university.
oh, that
Yeah,
is
it was
creepy.
interesting.
Do you
Yeah.
ever think that
I have no idea. If they're
well,
following me, I don't know.
oh, that's interesting. Well, I did think that me and my brother did think that the school was haunted.
Yeah, more than likely.
I still think it is now, actually. That's why I don't like being there at night.
I
So I
used to
study
love being there at night. That was the most fun part of work, being in the biology department. It was doing the lab stuff at night.
at night.
Which is weird because at the time it was the only building that didn't have walls.
And how old?
Walls? I mean, it had walls, rooms, but the building wasn't an enclosed structure
Oh, it was? Oh!
the way that it is now.
Oh, yeah, yeah, I
Oh,
remember that.
mhm.
Also confuses people when I tell them that
Oh, yeah.
I grew up in like a lab, and it's like that's a bad way of
Well,
putting
you
it.
kind of, I mean,
I
you
mean,
were
I always
little when I
I
was in the crime lab, and then you were little when I worked at biotech, and then you were little when I worked in the other labs. And then, so yeah, you grew up around
so I
laboratories.
grew up around that. So I when I
Hmm.
explained it to one of my friends, I said like, oh, basically grew up in a lab. It's like that's kind of weird when
Yeah,
you say it
in
just
a petri
when you
dish.
say it like that. And I go like, no, I didn't mean it like that. No, I don't think so. But um, that's like I always saw that stuff. There wasn't anything new for me.
Hmm.
Like seeing these things and like I went to one of my workshops a
Hmm.
while back, like a workshop for school, and I was working with some new gene splicing technology and stuff like that. I did a
Right.
decent job, I think.
Yeah, you did. I saw the product.
I'm pretty happy about that.
Yeah. And
I
you see
mean,
the gene splicing stuff and everything that they're doing now is stuff that when I worked into laboratory, it was the stuff of dreams. It was the stuff of fantasy. And I remember somebody saying, well, some now in the future, you're not going to need to take vaccines through syringes. You're just going to have to eat a banana because the vaccine will be in the banana. Yeah, so it's an interesting situation that you have that you actually do have um, genetic splicing happening, and it's fascinating to me.
I asked my professor at the time. I asked her if I could make myself part cuttlefish.
Yeah,
And she said, yeah, I could, but it wasn't
I don't think it
recommended.
was
It
recommended.
wasn't
Yeah,
recommended, but she said
yeah,
it'd be possible, but not recommended.
yeah,
But
yeah,
heavily unrecommended.
yeah. Any other questions?
I think that's all I have for right now.
Okay, we'll probably do this again next week if you think of any others, especially if we once we get started on listening to everything and all that stuff. Did you think of something?
I haven't thought of anything
Oh,
yet, but
okay. I thought that you were like, I
no,
have another one.
I'm gonna put a line here so I can know which question. Let me use the same card.
Okay.
I'll make sure I know which ones I did ask, so I can know which ones I already asked and which
Oh,
ones so I can have more.
perfect. Okay. Well, I guess that's it for tonight. With I guess we can call this behind the scenes of Murder Valley. Have a great one from Marianne.
Give me.
Have a good one. Love you lots.